Clock standing by to talk to us this morning is President of AZAPO, Councillor Nelvis Qekema. We're going to be reflecting on the legacy of the late Steve Biko. Before we are joined by Comrade Nelvis, let's take a listen to this clip.
Changes which are to come can only come as a result of a program worked out by black people. And for black people to be able to work out a program, they need to defeat the one main element in politics which was working against them, and this was a psychological feeling of inferiority.
25 after 9 o'clock exactly. On August the 18th, 1977, Steve Biko and a fellow activist received at a roadblock and jailed in Port Elizabeth. Sadly, Steve Biko was found naked and shackled outside a hospital in Pretoria, 740 miles or 1,190 kilometers away on September the 11th, and died the next day of a massive brain hemorrhage. And the question I ask myself, what would this country have been like if Steve Biko was still alive and in a government position? I reckon very, very different to what we see playing out right now. Comrade Nelvis Qekema, President of AZAPO, very good morning to you. Welcome to the program. And today you are going to be talking about the legacy of this giant of a man who is no longer with us. And that, of course, is Steve Biko. Welcome, and do go ahead.
Morning, Julie, and thank you so much for having us. It is indeed a special week or special month and a special year because it is the 45th anniversary of the murder of Steve Biko in police custody. Now, we've got to do this because many people wonder, why do we keep on remembering Steve Biko? Why don't we just forget that? Why don't we just move on? Isn't this a bygone? And we are saying to them, no. A person's death can never be a bygone because nothing has gone by. That which for which he died, is still staring us in our faces. Poverty, landlessness. The lack of humanity and dignity of our people as a result of colonialism, racism, enslavement, all those kind of things. You can name them. If you look around, you find that about 13 million of our people are unemployed. And if you talk about those, you're talking about black people. And by the way, when I talk about black people, because these days people bastardize these terms. When you talk about black people, we include in that term the so-called Indians, so-called Kalats, and the so-called Bantus in those days. So when we talk about black, understand all the time, that's a reference to those community, that's a black community. So what you see right now, we are talking about 3,297 pediatricians in black schools. And you've got to ask yourself, if you're sending your children to buy bucket toilets, people latrines, no water, no sewage, nothing, no electricity, how are they supposed to study? And you are saying to us, these are the leaders of tomorrow. So these are the challenges. More than a quarter of the million of the population is living on social grants. And when you know that, it's not bad that you are doing that. It is okay if you are doing that as a short-term measure. But once it becomes permanent, you are also perpetuating dependency. You are also perpetuating poverty. You are also perpetuating helplessness.
Mm.
In fact,
So
politicians love to do that. They love to do that because when they do that, they are making these people dependent to them every 4 years to vote, every 4 or 5 years to vote for them.
absolutely. You've just preempted my next question. And I'm saying to you that we shouldn't, almost 30 years into our democracy, we shouldn't be in the situation that we're in. And the one thing as you speak that springs to mind is that I kind of asked the question, had Steve Biko still been alive today and the likes of the late Chris Hani, I kind of wonder what the political landscape would look like. Uh, they were powerful, powerful Black consciousness leaders. And I'd like to think we wouldn't have the large scale corruption in government that we have now. And all of the money that these fat cat government ministers and officials are leading, that money could go to eliminate the latrine situation, the pit toilet situation that we have in the country. That money could go to upgrading our educational facilities. That stolen money could go to upping our health department, to provide housing. And it's really a very sad state of affairs that we find ourselves in. And I also want you to respond to this. In the 1970s, the Black consciousness movement spread from university campuses into urban Black communities directly as a result of, of Steve Biko. He started agitating Black youth in universities and townships. And I think our Black youth today should agitate against corruption, against greed, and in a responsible way, a lack of service delivery. But in a responsible way, it's no good that the youth go out in the name of Chris Hani, in the name of Steve Biko, in the name of Nelson Mandela, and then destroy infrastructure, because that means we're just making ourselves that much poorer, because we now need to throw money at damaged infrastructure, and we've got to start all over again from scratch. Your thoughts, Comrade Nelvis?
Julie, we know what you're saying about Biko is correct because Steve Biko demonstrated all that in his lifetime. We know that our people would have been in good hands, our country, our economy, our taxpayers' monies would have been in good hands. How do we know this? He demonstrated to us. We are talking about a young man. This is a young man who died at the age of 30. This is a young man who entered the struggle as a teenager. When he was doing all the kind of things that he did, he was only in his early 20s and immediately banned until his death. From 1973, he was banned. He could do nothing thereafter. So everything we talk about, Biko, is something that was done by a young man in his early 20s. Now, here is a man in his early 20s who was able to go out there and build a clinic, for poor people, a clinic for poor people, the Zanempilo Clinic in the Eastern Cape. Here is a person who was able to go out there and then even help with irrigation systems, in the villages. He was able to go out there and then mobilize resources to be able to educate poor Black children, and that is why there was the Zimele Trust Fund, to educate, to be able to dish out bursaries. He was there in literacy projects throughout the country, educating the poor, making them to be able to read and write. And today, look at what is happening today. The fees must fall. Students must go and toy and fight and bend things before they can be listened to, when they were promised that the doors of learning shall be open. And the more those doors open, the more they close. Yet he was able to do those things in his lifetime, and he was able to do that in the belly of the beast, right within the racist government. And what would he have done today? It would have been far, 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 far. Just think about a man. Forget about all these things that I've talked about, and they're not many, because he was able even to mobilize funds with Mapeka Mohapi to be able to help, a prisoners. And then to be able to transport, the relatives of these prisoners to all the other places where they want to see their relatives. But now forget about all these things, Julie. Forget about all these things and think about a man who is able to say, I so love my people that I will dedicate my life to them, my life to them. And he laid down his life. I'm telling you, Julie, if Steve Biko did not want to die, he would have avoided that. He knew that he was going to die. And that is why in all his interviews, he kept on saying, the way, if they treat me less than an animal, I'm going to give it back to them. And because I'm a human being, I'm not a subhuman being. And if they beat me up, I'm going to beat back. I'm going to hit back, and very hard. And I'm afraid in the process they're going to kill me. And that's why he also had that interview where he said, you are either alive or dead. And if you're dead, you can't care. Anyway, but this has got to be done. Let us defeat fear for death. So I'm saying we would have been far.
How do we upkeep his legacy, given what we're seeing playing out in our country right now? The country is on its knees. We have so very many different political parties, everybody promising the world to the voters, but when it comes to delivery, nothing is forthcoming. We have a very disenchanted youth. We need to take the we need to take this legacy forward. We need to use Steve Biko's example and have and mobilize a whole lot of new and upcoming Steve Bikos in our land to save our land from utter and total disaster. How does AZAPO view the situation, and how do we go forward? We need the ears of the youth. How do we do it? Comrade Nelvis.
We have a problem, Julie. You must understand, this happens all the time, in all the struggles, in all the revolutions, all the anti-colonial liberation movements. Once they get into power, the first thing they do is to demobilize the masses, is to immobilize the masses and make them dependent on the state. Once they make them dependent on the state effectively so, then the state delivers nothing, and then corruption and nothing. So what you are seeing now, you are seeing a terrible state of dependency. Our people are waiting for T-shirts to be delivered, are waiting for food parcels to be delivered, are waiting for all the type of things that are promised for them to be delivered. But on their own, they're just folding hands and doing nothing. Even when nothing is forthcoming, that which has been promised, all they do is to complain and throw their hands in the air hopelessly. So what we are saying at AZAPO, it is about time, we remobilize the people. It is about time we unite the people in the same manner that Steve Biko did across the sections of the Black community. It is about time, we came together and reactivate citizen activism. And we do not wait, fold arms, and look up to Parliament for things to happen. We've got to make things happen in the streets, in the villages, in the townships, wherever we live. We've got to set the agenda outside Parliament. If it is true that those who are in Parliament are representative of the people, so therefore, the people must set the agenda. The people must dictate the mandate. The people must dictate the developmental agenda. The people must dictate what it is, what content goes into freedom and democracy. So therefore, these things must happen in the streets. People must take to the streets. People must come together. Mass line, mass action, mass mobilization must be the order of the day. Because if that doesn't happen, those who are in parliament will make sure that we alienate our power, and our power becomes something that negates us. It boomerangs. We need to reclaim our power as a people. We must make it possible for people to know that if we give you our vote, and you don't do with our vote what we have asked you to do, get out of the way. We're going to put in somebody else. In other words, they say, even scholars say, for democracy to be able to work effectively and optimally, every ruling party or governing party must never be assured of staying in power come the next elections. But if
Okay.
organization,
All right, Comrade Nelvis, let me put 2 or 3 very important questions to you. Number one, you talk mass mobilization. We're seeing a lot of that with absolutely no results other than destruction of property and infrastructure, which is very, very sad. You talk about reigniting um, citizens activation. Yeah. How do we go about doing that in a responsible way? Who is going to reignite the spark as far as citizenry is concerned? What do you promise them at the end of the day? There has to be a something in it for us. When you talk to people, when you say to them, we need to reclaim our land, we need to reclaim our rights, we need to get South Africa flourishing again. They need to know that they are a part of something that is not broken. They are part of something that's going to be workable, and for them to be able to put food on the table. So it's the how and the who. Have you applied your mind to that very important question?
nothing we do without applying our minds. Remember, even what you have seen in this democratic dispensation, AZAPO warned the nation that these things were going to happen. As a result of that, we boycotted the 1994 elections. And everyone now is saying AZAPO was right. So here is the thing. Why do people, when they go out and then they engage in property destructions and doing all sorts of things that you could say are out of order, and indeed they are? Reason for that, it is because, for centuries and centuries, black people do not know what it is to own property.
Ah,
The term and
okay.
ownership, the terms of ownership, they don't understand that because we have never owned nothing, not even owned ourselves as human beings. We have a relationship that is negative with property. So when we see property, we never think that it is ours and belongs to us and that we have to harness it. We always think that it belongs to somebody else. And that is why if that somebody else does not listen, and then we destroy the property which we think is his or hers, we never think it is our own. And it is that conscientization that must happen to educate the people that the library is ours, the school is ours, the clinic is ours, and then it is built by our money. Even when the government comes to us and do whatever it does so with our money. It's not a political organization's money. So that conscientization has got to take place. Now, you go to the streets, you set the agenda, but what do you promise the people? What is the agenda? What is the objective? First of all, our land has got to come back. There is no country in the world where any part of its land is foreign owned like is happening in the country. That land has got to come back to the people. In fact, it's got to come back to the people in the custody of the state. There must be no private ownership of the land. The land must be dished out to the states in accordance with our needs and our developmental agenda. So what do I say? what we're saying, therefore, as a ZAPO, is that we must understand that we are getting into this because we want to socialize wealth. The wealth of this country is more than 80% of it is owned by 10% white people. That cannot be. So these are the things we need to talk about. We will never develop as a people after more than 400 years if we do not redistribute the wealth and the economy.
Powerful indeed. I've never thought about it that way regarding property ownership. You've just opened my eyes and mind to that very important statement. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. We are running out of time. In closing, what should we keep in mind regarding the legacy of the late, great Steve Biko?
Well, first of all, if we've got to remember just one thing, the love he had for the people. He had that undying love for the people, which made him to lay down his life. So when we do the kind of things that we do, we must remember that there is somebody who died, somebody who bled, ensuring that a number of things happen. That the humanity and dignity of the people is restored. That is why Steve Biko is talking about that glittering prize he can see on the distant horizon, and he says that glittering prize is the bestowing of a human face upon South Africa. So leaders, wherever you are, journalists, priests and everyone you are, ask yourself, have we, as Steve Biko laid his life for, bestowed upon South Africa a human face? I think not. Thank you.
Comrade Nelvis Qekema from AZAPO, President of AZAPO, sharing his thoughts on the legacy of Steve Biko. I thank you, sir, indeed, and we do hope and pray that AZAPO rises once again. Go well, God bless, keep us in your prayers. It is exactly 9:46 a.m. In a minute or two, we're going to be talking with the Deputy Principal at Kurtuba Online Academy.